And here we go, John. It's time for another episode of Eat Sleep Code, the official Telerik podcast. And my background today signifies the mood in the air. It's
yep, technology, isn't it great?
Good old dumpster fire.
How you
celebrating
doing, bud?
2020 with the dumpster.
Come on,
fire.
other than the dumpster fires, everything all right?
Going pretty good. It's Monday.
All right.
What can I say? Monday's full of Monday things.
Awesome.
Throughout the week, though, I suggest if you're not watching one of our shows, then tune into the .NET Community Stand-Up. If you haven't seen these before, you're missing out. It's all things .NET, and it's a news show basically covering all of the hot topics around like ASP.NET, Xamarin, all of the .NET things. And you get to hear from the PMs and the people working on the products as well. And they showcase things that are coming in new releases. Like last week, they had a big Blazor update, which was really cool. So they have a lot less JavaScript stuff that you'll have to worry about in .NET 5. They've got an intern that's here working on a bunch of stuff in making it easy for developers to do things like SEO and edit the head tags, stuff like that. They've also done a lot of work on making it more performant. So there's a lot of big performance buffs coming for Blazor. So it will have faster render times and better performance serializing JSON data in and out. So
always important.
Yes.
Always important. How are things in Blazor these days? Like communities, gravitating to it right now, or still seen as an experimental thing, or are you seeing apps being built in it?
No more experiments. We've got customers using it here at Progress, so it's always good. So the traction is starting to gain pretty heavily there. We've got a lot of community interests, so the Blazor Gitter channel's a place to pick up on what everybody's working on. I've got actually a pretty cool link here that we can jump to since we're on the topic of Blazor.
My goodness.
So somebody in the community has built, this is actually Michael Washington. He's built a Blazor-based, what do you call this coding style again? Where you drag and drop the little blocks.
Horror and my nightmares.
No, this is for like teaching kids and stuff like that. You wouldn't know anything.
I got it. I think it's called Scratch, I think.
Yeah, like a Scratch model. All built in Blazor, and he's blogged about it on his website. On the Blazor Help website. That's literally what it's called, blazorhelpwebsite.com.
I love the logo. That's hot.
That's
that's retro and uncool at the same time.
It's high design. We won't pick on poor Michael Washington too much. He's got some great content here. Content is king, and he's got some really good stuff on how he rigged all this up. So it is using... this one's called Blockly. I think we called it Scratch, which is, I guess this is a version of a fork of Scratch or something. But it's using that and Babylon to render like this little puppet animation and stuff. And you actually try this in the browser if you click on his links that he has there, and you can see the XML markup for this Scratch layout. You can see the C# code that generates behind that, and you can also run it. And again, this is all Blazor, which is really neat. And if I toggle this box, it will toggle the animation for the little ragdoll in here. And you can go back into the editor, you can change all that stuff, and you can adjust how that animation happens and what items are in the drop down and all that.
I love how he's using the stock standard template look and feel for the outer shell and everything. Just like No need to take hello world and change it. We'll just keep the standard, menu items the way they were. Perfect.
We've
Love
even
it.
got the counter example.
Counter.
Here
Perfect.
still.
Perfect. Just what we wanted.
This is blog post content, so I mean you can't be too hard on the guy. It's implementing Scratch here in a Blazor view, which is really really interesting because it's creating C# code behind the scenes. It has to compile that when you're running it. So when you hit run code, I mean that's compiled code that it's running.
Yeah.
It's very interesting. He's able to link all these things up together.
Sorry, I'm bitter.
It's like an unholy mashup, maybe. But
yeah, it is a bit unholy, I would say. So, yeah, good for him. That's awesome.
Great blog post, though. You can read all about it on Blazor Help website. And I think he's doing like a little series there on that stuff.
Okay.
Redis on Redis on .NET Core. It's a data storage that you can use with .NET. There's a 20-minute episode here on Channel 9. Another great place to get content, by the way. Channel 9 has all sorts of stuff. Dating back years. I've been a big fan of Channel 9 for at least a decade, right?
Yep.
So Todd Gardner's on here talking about how to use Redis with .NET. It gets those linked together and running within 20 minutes. So it's worth checking out if you're interested in Redis and you're a .NET developer, or you're a Redis developer and you're interested in the .NET. You want to see how to marry those two things up? Give that a look.
Yeah, I haven't done a lot with Redis. I've done some cursory looking at it. I think I set it up as a backend cache a long time ago. It's certainly interesting. Provides this sort of notion of everything's a key value pair. Extremely fast, apparently, but I haven't put it into production or anything like that. But yeah, definitely worth taking a look at for sure. Very rock solid, and works well for a lot of folks. So, but one of many data storage technologies out there for sure.
Yeah, I know some folks over there. I know Todd and some other folks over there. I thought, why not give that a share with everybody? They're really nice people. You should check that stuff out and see what they're working on. Let's see here. Wireless charging is a disaster waiting to happen. I think the title may be a little bit too doom and gloom.
Yeah, I was going to say.
I don't see this being like the rise of the machines or anything like that. I think there's bigger fish to fry. Let's just say that.
Yeah, like Bitcoin mining maybe. So.
But this wireless charging stuff is really convenient and cool, but it is very wasteful energy-wise. It's basically an open transformer system, and you're not in any type of control over what your waste is going to be on that system. So depending on where you may toss your phone or however it lands on your charging station, it's going to be pretty inefficient at transferring that power.
I love how we tackled this as like a problem, right? Like we were just like, ugh, I hate charging. I hate plugging in my phone. It's like, this thing lasts only a day. Give me a break, Well,
I mean, I think it all feels like a little bit of magic too when you can do this wireless stuff. We have like Wi-Fi, and we can get our TVs and movies and all that stuff just wirelessly streamed now. I remember when I first moved into this house that I'm in now, was 13 years ago, which doesn't sound like a long time. But in the technical realm, I mean, that's enough time to where we had phone cables and cable TV cables run through the house. And a couple, maybe 5 years ago or something, I went in and closed up all of those wall terminals because everything's wireless now.
Why?
Everybody's got a cell phone. All the TVs are on Roku. We don't need all those wires running all over the place. So they're all taped up behind the walls now. So these things feel like magic. Now we've got wireless power, but with everything there's a price. So they're stating in the article here between 47 and 39% loss on these things, and I think they're maybe overstating the problem a little bit. But if you were to do this at some sort of massive scale and convert everybody's phone over to this new wireless charging stuff, it could be kind of a not green thing to happen.
No, of course. If you do the laws of exponential growth or what have you. Steve Jobs was a master at this sort of emotional manipulation, right? I remember he used to say things like, well, apparently this is what he said, not me personally knowing, but I remember hearing stories about him saying to people working on the bootloader for Mac OS, saying, we've got 5 million customers, 6 million customers using Mac, and if you were to get the boot time down by 5 seconds, imagine the amount of time savings you're doing for all of those people, like 5 seconds times 5 million. And I think this author uses that same sort of conclusion, which is if everyone switches over to wireless charging and we're all wasting this power, think about how much collective or total power we're going to waste.
Yeah.
And sure, I mean, you can do that statement, but it's like there's nothing wrong with there are some benefits and some obviously not so great benefits of doing it, that sort of thinking. Like, for example, climate change is a perfect example. There's nothing wrong fundamentally with driving a gas guzzling car. The problem is that too many people are doing it, and some people are doing it in different forms, like, countries and corporations and all that sort of stuff are producing too much CO2. But that sort of thinking, when you're trying to justify your argument, doesn't really hold for me.
The comments agree with you here, John.
Okay.
Even though the article itself is an interesting thought piece, but I kind of agree with some of this as well. Interesting article, but disaster waiting to happen is a bit over the top.
Yeah.
And then you could also call it uninformed scaremongering clickbait. I think that's also a little extreme.
You suck.
I mean, can we not write articles that
don't
share
incur the wrath
opinion? And it was a little clickbaity, but
it is.
Fear mongering. I don't know.
Now, to his credit, if it had been like something like this will generate lightning, or this ends up destroying your phone, or whatnot, then I could, like, if the consequence of doing this was something bigger than saying we're losing about half as much power as we're committing to charging the device, then I would agree with the author.
Yeah.
So way to go, Eric. You've incurred my wrath.
I do think it's a little overstated, but still a good geek out piece.
Sure.
I would have liked to have seen
him. I would have liked to have seen him offer up a alternative, right? Like, I don't know if he did so in the article. I didn't.
The alternative's plugging in, John. I mean, come on, dude.
Yeah, I know, but this is the society of I need instant gratification. So plugging in takes too long. The second or two it takes for me to plug in is too long. So maybe provide a better plug. Maybe these plugs are not all that great. I mean, I've got this is a USB-C plug here, and this took a long time for us to get, right? Remember how bad it was with USB-A and USB-B, I think, and this is USB-C, and now we finally can go either way, right? We can go this way and we can go this way. That was considered really, really big, right? So I think that we need. I like the magic locks and the magic connectors that Apple kind of utilized.
Magnetic stuff.
Yeah, I think that is a good step in the right direction. Maybe the solution here is a better sort of connector, right?
Yeah, I've got magnetic connectors on my phone, in my my portable speaker, and my VR headset.
Perfect.
They're all different. One is USB whatever, the other two are Type C.
Right.
But with the magnetic connector, they're all the same. The only problem with the magnetic connectors is they don't do data transfer, at least not mine. But what's really nice about them is you don't break connectors and you don't wear out ports too. And that's not something that they talk about in the article here, is if you wear out a port on a phone, generally that whole phone is trash. But want to talk about environmental problems. Trashing a phone is a lot of lost energy and
I agree.
Additional waste.
I agree. Yes. Well, the environmental disaster waiting for that is certainly understated. It's a huge problem, But I would say that by the time your magnetic connector is toast, your phone is toast. Meaning, most phones have a shelf life of maybe 18 to 24 months. I would say. After that, people want to replace them. I don't know. I'm still rocking my iPhone 7. Right, you can see the edges are really not doing too well. But yeah, I mean, this connector here, this lightning connector thing that we've got going is not great. We need a better solution for that.
That's what I'm saying. You wear one of those out, your phone's dead. I know some people in my household that have worn out the older style USB ports.
Right.
And we've had to replace devices. So magnetic connectors, those help with the wear and tear because they don't have a insertion. Yep. In and out click that's wearing down connectors and so on. And then everybody in my house likes to charge their phone while they're on it, playing games, talking, you name it. And all that bending, like all that articulation right there is what really wears those ports out. So with the magnetic ones, when they do that, they just fall off. So we've solved a little household problem with the mag connectors. You can grab those on Amazon. Just search magnetic USB connectors. You can find like a million different vendors for them. Visual Studio Code, they are updating it yet again.
Yeah. So we've had a lot of updates in this month. This past month, we've had a lot of We've had a lot of 0.4 star updates that have shipped in Visual Studio Code. Visual Studio Code is one of the better, if not the best, code editing environments that you can get. I would certainly put it up against anything. And we've been seeing a lot of updates coming out recently. So Visual Studio Code recently got an update. This is 1.48. Adds a lot of features and improvements. Not a major update by any stretch, but certainly offers a lot of niceties. If you're doing anything around Git integration, or you're looking for features that help you to search against extensions or publishing repositories or whatnot, things like that, there will be some nice features and updates there for you. I would encourage you to take a look as well as the Insiders build. The Insiders is basically a nightly that is created by the team. Sometimes features that go in there don't ship for weeks or months in advance, and so it's a good way to get exposed to them. And I like doing that because by the time they ship in code proper, you're already an expert in using them. So definitely worth taking a look at. And if you haven't downloaded Visual Studio Code, runs super well on Mac, runs on Linux, runs on Windows. Obviously, should be your code editor experience, de facto code edit experience for sure.
Yeah, and I think I've mentioned this on the show before. I did some Java development back in the day, and the Java part of it isn't the bad part. I'm not going to down Java. It's still a good language. It's used on Android. It's used on Android, and when I used it, it was for what's the big CRM company again? Salesforce. It's Salesforce development. But the worst part about it was I had to use Eclipse, and Eclipse was no fun. Visual Studio Code, I wish that was a thing when I was doing Java development, just so I didn't have to use Eclipse. So it's nice that there's alternatives now. VS Code and our friends over at what's the name of the Java editor there at JetBrains?
Rider, is it?
Rider.
Okay. Oh, you mean IntelliJ?
IntelliJ, that's the one.
Yeah.
If that stuff would have existed during my stint with Java, I think it would have went a lot easier, and I would have had a much better opinion of it.
Anyone can do the same thing. Like, yeah, if it wasn't for InterDev, I would have been a better web developer, sort of thing. Like, there's been crap IDEs forever. That's part of those scars and that sort of tissue buildup is what you need in order to survive the new paradigms that come to fruition later on in life, right? It's like anything. You got to go through the hard yards. So I don't regret my experience with reinstalling my OS because I happened to install a preview of Visual Studio. That's part of it. You got to go through those learning experiences. The kids these days, I know every episode we do this, it's like, the kids these days have it so good, but it is true. The kids these days do have it really good. I mean,
Yeah.
yeah.
You want to know what I was working with on that project? I was mashing up .NET Nuke web forms.
Yeah.
And the back end was Salesforce and Java.
Sweet. So .NET Nuke is a .NET CMS that was written by. Is it? I thought it was. Yeah, it was written by, I think, I want to say a couple folks whose names elude me for a second here. But it was a very, very primitive sort of CMS implemented on .NET, and that sounds like a nightmare.
It was quite the project, but it was successful. That's it. That's all I'm going to say.
Sweet.
The company was doing training portals stuff. So
okay,
it was like you go in there and get all your courseware and then sign up for courses and all that there. And they sold their business. They're no longer a thing anymore, but it was a nice little project while I had it. ReSharper, we were just talking about JetBrains. ReSharper's got some new stuff.
Yeah. So speaking of integration with tools like Visual Studio, etc., ReSharper is an extension for Visual Studio. Great extension. Definitely should be part of your arsenal. Basically takes Visual Studio and puts it on what's that monster drink or Red Bull? It's like Visual Studio and Red Bull. They've just recently shipped 2020.2. Lots of features in here. New inspections for C# 8. Things like new features like nullable reference types, code cleanup on save, revamped unit test runner. Yeah, so lots of great stuff here. And I think the reason why I wanted to mention this is because obviously tools are the way in which we get our job done as developers, and ReSharper is definitely one of those tools that if you haven't had a chance to look at yet and you're just using Visual Studio out of the box, you certainly owe it to yourself to look at this extension. And the reason why is obviously because it, as I said earlier, it dramatically improves the code first experience of Visual Studio.
Yeah, excellent stuff. Especially that format on save. I've got my keys like muscle memory now to do all that stuff as I'm like typing and saving.
Oh yeah.
But those are keystrokes I really could do without.
That's right. Yeah, I certainly have the scars to show from my years of Emacs. So same thing can be applied for all the key bindings that exist in VS.
Importing Kubernetes, YAML, and Octopus.
Yeah, so I thought this is a shameless plug for my folks. So one of the things that we're working on at Octopus is a feature we're calling config as code, which is basically the ability to be able to work with projects and then utilize a backend such as Git to import those settings. Octopus Deploy, for those who don't know, is a deployment tool used by a lot of people, both in the .NET space and others. And one of the things that Matthew Casperson writes about in this article is how we can utilize the YAML description, which is just a markup description for Kubernetes. Kubernetes is a technology from Google, which allows you to do deployments that scale very, very well and nicely, has a lot of integrated tools, etc. And so in this article, he talks about how we're able to import those seamlessly via Octopus itself. And this is kind of, it lines itself well to us being Octopus, being able to import and utilize markup config like YAML and HCL, which is another one from HashiCorp, natively within the tool itself. So lots of stuff coming from us. Shameless plug, I know, but just something I wanted to note for folks who are interested in that.
It's good stuff. I'm always curious how YAML ended up getting to be this configuration language, because wasn't YAML designed kind of like a markdown, like to make HTML easier?
Yeah, so YAML is one of a few formats that people tend to tend to favor. JSON is another one that's very popular, obviously, but YAML itself, one of the reasons why YAML has some, I guess, some problems, let's say, is the fact that indentation is a key aspect to it. So people, make jokes online about having to pull out a ruler to see if their indentation lines up, etc. So some people don't like YAML at all. In fact, there have been websites, I won't name any, but there are websites that are singly purposed for destroying the favoritism towards YAML. HCL is another one. HCL is very popular for data serialization, especially in tools like Terraform, etc. This one was popularized, obviously, by HashiCorp. And, I would say that use what makes you happy. At the end of the day, there are ways in which things get serialized that, serialization has been a bane of our existence forever. XML, before that, I guess, there was all kinds of delimited formats that you had. It's just basically taking a representation that either occurs in memory or otherwise, and then just persisting that in a format that people can understand. There's always this contention as well, as people are looking at these things to like, oh, it has to be human readable, etc. That's thus the need for YAML. I would say that these things aren't hard. I don't know why people get so hung up on these things, but they're not that hard. I mean, obviously they become unwieldy when they get huge, and they do get huge. But I would say that, we've got tools for that stuff, and you can certainly format correctly and do all those things. But I know that there's always seems to be this imperative towards, the tool should not have to struggle, humans should be able to read this easily, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, yes and yes, but, until that day comes, we're stuck with these serialization formats. So just get used to them and use them, and why are you checking an ugly YAML,
I'm gonna correct myself. I was thinking HAML was used for HTML markup, not
Oh, I
YAML.
see. Yes.
So
that's just a templating system.
there.
That's yeah. So there's markdown, markup. We're talking mostly HTML when we say markup, that means HTML. HAML's another one for templating. There's tons of templating formats out there that use these sort of double mustache notation and all kinds of delimiters for representing jumping out of the template and then into the template. Again, that's another thing where so long as I can do what I'm expecting to do, meaning I need to reference objects and do code, etc., then I'm happy. I've used any number of templating languages out there. Some of them more frustrating than others, especially when piping output. That seems to be a real problem with templating languages. I don't get why, but piping output is typically, when you're using a templating language, typically you want to be like, here's an object I'm using, spit out this markup, and then reference that object, and then use that return value or property or whatever, and spit that out right here. And that, for some reason, seems to be a big problem with templating languages. And I'm not saying that facetiously. I'm saying that it just happens to be the case. I would imagine if you're writing one of those templating languages, it must be hard, because there's this notion of pre-processing that occurs, and then there's like, oh, that has to be dynamic in nature because I need to pipe it out to the output, channel, whatever that may be, et cetera, et cetera. So there can be some problems there for sure.
And editor support as well. So the editor has to be able to do IntelliSense and all that stuff on it. So
it's a nightmare.
Yeah. Everything we have, we should be thankful for.
Yeah, I've said more than one occasion on this show that I have a great deal of sympathy for people who write compilers and for people who kind of live in that world. It's very, very challenging.
Microsoft Crank, like 70s drug references start coming to mind. What is this about, John? What are you doing?
Yeah, so this is just basically a benchmarking infrastructure. So this is something that is available up on the .NET organization, up on GitHub. There's two main aspects to this. There's the Crank, which is the CLI for starting jobs and recording results, and then there's the Crank agent, which is for executing them. Basically, the way Crank is used for basically doing these tech compiler benchmarks. you can do this yourself if you wanted. You know, I don't know if people are going to be benchmarking their own applications, but I certainly think it's data that would serve a purpose, especially when you're iterating over your application to see if your performance is going up or down. This end-to-end testing is something that I think a lot of people don't do, and I think it's a real sad indictment of our industry, which is we tend to favor unit tests because those are more understandable. End-to-end, or what's commonly referred to as ETE testing, is something that I think a lot of people don't do, and especially around performance. It's something that I think should be done because it will give you a much more real-world indication of how your application is performing. So Microsoft Crank, some you can use in that context. There's tons, just like there's tons of serialization formats and templating languages, there's tons of testing formats and testing frameworks, etc. So this is just another example of one.
Yeah, there's a lot of different benchmarks that you can do with Tech and Power too.
Yeah.
It's a good place to go see how your stack holds up, though. Whether using Node or .NET or whatever on the back end, Ruby, or not Ruby, Rails. You can see how the stacks hold up there. It's pretty interesting stuff. Microsoft putting off fixing 0-day for 2 years.
Yeah.
How dare they?
Yeah, I like reading Krebs on security. This is a pretty good resource of all things security related, especially in the programming world. And this is an article that kind of came across my wire there, basically talking about, I'll just back up for a second. For those who don't know, the latest Patch Tuesday came out, and there was 120 security holes that were patched from Microsoft in Windows and other supporting systems. That was a lot. But you know, it's good to see these get plugged. These often very, very esoteric but important security vulnerabilities that can occur. In fact, there was one that we saw that was related to .NET Core, us being Octopus, that affected us. We had to do a quick update for us, but the news here is that obviously Microsoft's commitment to securing or fixing 0-day. 0-day is a term used in the security realm where an exploit is announced, typically by a black hat, or actually not a black hat. It would be more of a white hat or a gray hat, saying, "Hey, this exists." And 0-day is a reference to the first day that an exploit is announced publicly. And oftentimes there is a very strong imperative by companies to repair these or fix these as soon as humanly possible. And so fixing a 0-day means we're going to try and fix this right now and put a patch out as quickly as possible without all of the sort of checks and balances that go along with that. Whenever Microsoft, or anyone else for that matter, typically submits a patch, there's a lot of review that goes in to that, because the last thing you want to do is regress or add new bugs that possibly add or introduce new holes in your software. So this commitment to fixing 0-day is great, but as the article informs, Microsoft has had some challenges in the past fixing some of these. In fact, historically, and Microsoft's not alone in this, but there are companies that unfortunately don't prescribe to the same idea of fixing these as soon as possible. In fact, they'll let them sit in the wild for quite a long time, unfortunately. So, it is sometimes peculiar as to why companies don't try and, fix these as soon as possible. But, it could be for a variety of reasons. Sometimes these exploits are harder to fix than people assume. Right? They can be like, they could cause massive architectural changes in the underlying software. And so they're not just, I forgot to check to see if this value is null or not. Right? They can be very, very hard to patch. So I would imagine that some of these companies are looking at this and saying, okay, this could be a challenge for us to fix.
Yeah, you got to fix it without breaking something else as well. So breaking changes
Correct.
could be a big issue, or performance. That's another one that we've seen with some of these exploits. Is the fix is possible, but it comes at quite a cost of processing power to do it. So it's a decision that's not taken lightly.
No.
All right,
So,
John.
yep.
I think that wraps it up for us today. We'll
All right.
try this again next Monday.
All right. We'll try again.
Thanks, everybody, for joining us. We'll do it again next Monday. We've got all kinds of shows coming up on the Code It Live channel this week. We just wrapped up the big Silverlight sunsetting episode or day that we did on Thursday last week. So those recordings are up on our YouTubes and our Twitch library as well. So make sure you check that out. There's lots of interesting stuff about migrating your apps and whatnot in there. Make sure you look back at that. John, any last words?
Nope. Just at the sort of what they call the pandemic of kindness. Make sure that you do something nice for your neighbor or friend. Give them a call, especially in these hard times. Everyone stay safe, wash your hands, etc., etc. And hopefully we'll see you here next week in a better state and mind. Use this as an opportunity for learning and expanding yourself, and hopefully go for those small gains. Make sure that you're 1% better than you were yesterday or the day before.
I just did the manual fade to dumpster fire.
This is hilarious. I'm the optimist. You're the pessimist. Perfect.
This is my 2020, folks.
All right.
Signing off. Have a good one, John.
All
Have
right.
a good week, man. Bye.